Looking good, man.
Bless.
All right.
All right, we are live, folks. We are here. Good night. Welcome to Fatherhood Talks Think Tank, a weekly dose of normality for fathers in our communities. Tonight we're going to be having a conversation. Someone said to me, "Hey, I seen your pen. It said fighting for your children," but that's on just the beginning part of it. It's not fighting for your children, because we don't believe in fighting for our children. We believe in advocating for them. But tonight's topic is fighting for your children's right to be wrong. And so we're gonna have I think we look like we have some real knowledgeable fellas here tonight. So we're gonna try to get some good information about their experience of some of their experiences in this topic. Again, welcome to Fatherhood Think Tank. I gotta get used to saying that. Gotta get used to saying that, but hey, I'll get it together. I'm Ron Osborne Williams, the organizer, I guess, of the Fatherhood Think Tank. Hey, Rohan, I see you coming on. You gotta pull a new screen, my brother. You gotta pull a new screen. But let's let the other fathers introduce themselves, and then we can get into this conversation.
Okay. Elder Thomas Alberry, father of 2 adult children, and a grandfather of 7, 2 boys and 5 girls. Welcome to the think tank.
Good afternoon. Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Lonnie Lightborn. I'm a father to a tribe of 7 young adults, 4 young men, 3 young women, and 1 granddaughter. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Good evening. My name is Boyd Gibson. I'm the father to 3 daughters. I have no grandchildren. It's nice to be here. Elder Albury and I go way back. We were in the Army together in 1972 and have been brothers ever since.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Ed Tenney. I am a father of 6, 3 biologicals and 3 steps. I have a granddaughter who's out the oven and another granddaughter that's still cooking.
Good evening, everybody. J. Rob Menard, father of 2 young adults, one boy, 1 girl. I guess male, female. They're adults now, so I can't call them boys and girls anymore. But you know, my son's in the background say you still call me boy. But yeah, so
as is your right.
As is my right. Thank you. Let me know.
I'm Justin Gibson. I'm a father of 5. I have 2 boys and 3 girls. I've always said, "Drum my time with you, gentlemen."
All right, anybody else in there? I see we got some other people in there. Wanna come on downtown?
While we wait, I need to ask Justin, where are you from? Because I don't usually think that every Gibson can be related, but your voice is a dead ringer from my father's voice. You sound and talk
Oh.
just like my dad. And I'm saying, whoa,
Really? Well, my
really?
parents are Jamaican, but I'm American though.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I seen. I noticed that. That's why normally I go by Gibson, but once I seen another Gibson, I was like, I gotta let my actual last name be known, Gibson. But I go by both Gibson or Gibbs. But yeah, definitely.
Look at that fatherhood think tank, bringing families together.
Bringing families together. People from all around.
That's
All
right.
Is there anybody else in the room that just want to introduce themselves before we get this conversation started? If not, if let me just say this: if you do talk and you haven't introduced yourself, maybe just introduce yourself then when you do say something. All right. So tonight we're talking about fighting for the right for your children to be wrong. I don't know. I'm gonna let somebody else start this one off tonight because I don't think I have enough experience yet because I haven't had to fight with my child about them being wrong yet. They still are ordered, they still in the youngest stage where you kind of have, you still take directions and those things. So let one of these fathers here who got the kids of a certain age.
Well, I'll start. The first thing that comes to mind is that we have to be able to accept the fact that we can be wrong and that we can make mistakes, and that by making mistakes and being wrong from time to time, no matter what we're doing, we can learn from that experience. So therefore, we should also allow our children to be able to learn from their mistakes and from them being wrong as well. That's the first thing that comes to my mind, is that we learn by doing. And if you don't make mistakes, it's because you haven't tried anything. You haven't done anything. And so we're all going to make mistakes. And so we have to accept it that we can do it. And then we have to accept and allow our children to be able to do the same thing.
Piggyback on what Mr. Gibson just
Now,
explained.
just Boyd. I'm not. My dad is Mr. Gibson. I'm Boyd.
All right, Boyd, it is. Just to make sure I don't make the mistake and call you Boyd Anderson. But I digress. Yeah, he's correct. I think our children, and all children being young, preserves their right to be wrong. It gives us the opportunity to give back to what was given to us chronologically. And I was also thinking about it, since the Heat is doing so well, I would like to honor Jimmy Butler with this statement, because I just read a story about him I didn't know anything about. And he's in a situation where his mother would have had to fight for his right to be wrong, when the fact that she had to put him out, and this is what I read, that she put him out her house at age 13. And coincidentally, he was raised by his friend's mother, who happened to be Caucasian. Now, I don't believe that, I believe there's racial injustices, right? But I don't see any kind of racism and kindness, if that make any sense. And so with his situation, he was able to be raised from the age 13 to 18 between his mom and his best friend mom, who coincidentally adopted him after his mom put him out. And so fighting for your child right to be wrong, the dynamics, that's probably one of those good exhibits or the examples that we can learn from if we knew the story in its totality. But again, she had to do what she had to do on both ends. It doesn't make his mom wrong, don't necessarily make him wrong. But that all had to happen to get him where he's at tonight, at this particular championship game. Shameless plug from the hood. You understand? And the essence of the scripture, all things work together for them who love the Lord. So I think all things work together for that particular situation. And I'm just I'm glad that it did happen, because it really put us in a good position tonight as a city and as a town and as a team. Again, shameless plug.
You know, when I think about the title, you know, it makes me think of self a little bit, myself. And thinking about when you say fighting for your child's right to be wrong, I think that as parents, we have such a strong want for our kids not to be wrong, meaning we'll do everything we can to help them and guide them and tell them, you know, don't make mistakes because I made these mistakes and I'm going to show you the right way to go, right? And in doing so, we then pose different challenges on our kids because experiences is what makes you who you are. And when we start to diminish or the amount of experiences that the kids go through, I think it's a detriment. So when I think of fighting for our kids' right to be wrong, it's really fighting yourself to allow your kids to make mistakes and to guide them and correct them into what it is that they want to do. I think, you know, and I think as parents, we're all guilty of that because again, we don't want our kids to go through hard times. But sometimes kids learn more going through a hard time and you helping them through that hard time than just giving them the answer right away. And I think so when you think about fighting for the right to be wrong, I think that's what comes to mind for me.
Well, I guess I'm a little bit confused. Are we talking about facts or are we talking about opinions? Because I've told my kids growing up, listen, we have freedom of speech, and you need to be open enough to allow all conversations so that they can be vetted to determine whether or not that is something you want to give assent to or not. So to put it succinctly, I told them, listen, you're free to be stupid because we need stupid people around to give contrast to those who have intelligent opinions and, you know, given a certain amount of time, what may be considered stupid now may not be stupid later. So with opinions, you know, I would greatly fight for their right to speak freely of their opinions. But I'm not so sure I understand what it means to fight for your children if they are factually wrong about something. So I would need some clarification from you gentlemen to, you know, understand that one.
I think like a lot of our topics, this has such a broad definition. So I think it teeters on both. Are you fighting for your right to be wrong factually, or are you fighting for the right to be wrong theoretically or rhetorically or whatever, however else? Because you could take this into any different type of way. Like I took it, like I said, I took it as a personal thing to me, as myself, fighting myself from stopping my child from experiencing life, right? So in another way, you can take it as, okay, now we're talking about legalities, all right? So am I going to fight for the legalities of my child to be wrong in public, right? Because it is their right to make mistakes. But then you have the extent of what that mistake is and the repercussions for the mistakes that they make. You see, so that's where the topic is just one of those broad things that you can take it in any direction. So there's no, for me, I don't see a wrong answer when you're trying to fight for your child in any aspect.
I can piggyback off of J-Rob. Vaughn, if you're on here, you can feel free to say something too. And my wife saw you on camera, so I didn't know that was you on that Jason. But nevertheless, to answer Teeny's question, Teeny, there's a lot of injustices going on with our youth, right? And particularly with youth of color. from the pre-K level all the way up to the teen or young adult level when they hit the age of 18, where that if you look at the suspension rates, Black kids are suspended at 3 times, 2 to 3 times, maybe even more than white kids for the same exact behaviors or mishaps. Then if you take that up into the adolescence, juvenile and all that stuff like that, then they're prosecuted again 2 to 3 times when it comes to the prison state, not in prison state, but jail stays, etc., or crimes rather, where a white child may get some type of programming or treatment, and the Black kids, adolescents or teens may get incarceration. And you see the studies on so many levels for the exact same crime. And in some cases, if the crime could be worse on the white end, on the Black end, and that Black kid or that child or the minority may still get X amount of time, basically based on the history or the historic injustices or the historic harms that, that's still, plagues the system. And so fighting for your child right to be wrong, yeah, your child can be wrong, but they need to be punished or even prosecuted within the confines of that law, or better yet, within the mercy of the law that's distributed to other kids as opposed to minority kids.
So, Lionel, let me ask you a question. When we're fighting, we be educating our children, not the right, but why you stand to fight with them. And the reason I say this is because the mindset of this generation of young people are so far, like in so many ways different than the mindsets that we had growing up, or the education that we received. Now, I'm not talking about education from a school. I'm talking about education from within the community. We need to help our kids to understand what they're up against, so that when they see these things, these crimes being committed, or they're in a position where, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's peer pressure, whether it's any of the things that can jeopardize their safety, their rights, they need to be aware of it, and that starts at home. That starts with us, and not just at home, because I heard you mention about the kid that was put out of his house at 13. I'm that same guy. But the people in the community that are constantly showing you that we fight for you. You have to understand, they have to be put in a position to understand what we're standing there for, because it's a difference between fighting for and upholding wrongdoings.
I agree wholeheartedly, Ron. But when we fighting for is what you call what they call equitable experiences, right? Because you see a lot of things going on with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so if we're going to talk about that, then we have to make sure that we preserve the equitable right to for our children to have an equitable experience, which means they ought to be punished or disciplined at the same rate that other children are being disciplined at, be it white or affluent. Oftentimes they don't, because the laws is unfortunately just set up that way, and particularly in the southern states, like a Florida, like a Alabama, like a Georgia, et cetera. And so that's where you need to, because you can be, I think a prime example of fighting for your right to be, this is the perfect example, is the Central Park Five. That's a great example. Yeah. And so if you don't learn how to fight for your child's right to be wrong, and they weren't even wrong, you understand? But they was under what they call a perception or perceived wrong, just simply because of this color of their skin, had nothing to do with them. But they were still persecuted and got all their life and their experience. You understand when I say equitable experiences? They got all their childhood snatched for them, pretty much rape, a public rape at that. And so that's what I mean by that. So we can't take the majority. And again, we got to understand on how this narrative is actually skewed or swung when it comes to crimes and stuff like that. We think that in our community, in Black communities, that a certain 50% of the people committing crimes, when that's a damn lie. When I know that it's less than 3% of the people that's doing all this stuff. And so if that is true, you understand, then why would we allow all of our youth to be punished I guess the mishaps of the 3% of the youth that is doing this crazy stuff. And so that's what I'm saying. We have to be able to make sure that this narrative is, first of all, always controlled by us and always balanced by everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Vaughn, that was Jimmy Butler I was talking about. I was just reading the narrative on internet that had no idea about that he was actually adopted by his best friend's mother, who was Caucasian, after his mom put him out at 13 for, doing stuff we used to do back in the day.
Jimmy Bucket Butler?
You better know it.
All right.
That's the thing about and we talk about, Vaughn, you mentioned the village concept. Well, that's what the village about. Now, I know we're not used to seeing the villages of a different hue. You understand? But when you talk about kindness and the fact that his friend who may have been, I think he was Caucasian, his friend who was Caucasian could love him enough to make his mother love him as well and bring her into his home. You understand? To take up the slack from the home that he was causing chaos in. And none of them are the villain, because we got to be careful to not let them make that Black mother a villain with that particular story. Exactly. And so it almost actually tells like the Blind Side story. You understand? But at the end of the day, in the Blind Side, that mother had no equity, even though she was up against the disparities, or better yet, the very people that may have brought him in, not specifically them, but the very capitalism that really preserved them. You understand? Actually prosecuted, in some cases, prostituted her to actually put her son in that predicament when it came to the Blind Side, the football movie. But at the end of the day, I think this was more communal when it came to Jimmy Butler's situation, but similar. And that's another topic within itself that we need to talk about with those stories like that, because again, I don't want to make anybody the enemy or whatever the case may be. Again, kindness is kindness. You can't judge kindness. But it's a deep dive that we need to take into that. Those stories never get to the forefront until you get into an NBA championship or NFL championship.
Well, Slugger, I mean Lionel. one of the things that you said that makes so much sense is we have to understand who's controlled the narrative up until this point. All right. There venues such as this one that the narrative is being controlled not just by us, but with having respect for what the universe has in store, right? We control the narrative, and we have to control it in a way where we're actually trying to write bills that changes these things, or even finding a bill that, because I'm quite sure written it just hasn't been put into law. We have to discover things like that so that we can stand behind it, not just the 7, 8, 10, 15 people that are on this call, but the hundreds and hundreds of groups that have 10 or 15 people in it, and we have to stand and support it, because changing it on a communal level really doesn't do anything, because those things are not being translated or being shipped to the powers that be. We have to do our best to fight in that way, if that makes sense.
Totally agree.
And you know what I just thought about? All right, you think about this. What's the name of the thing when the mother lost her kid to a drunk driver and
Mad.
Oh my God.
Mad.
Right. That was a bill. That was a bill, and she stood behind that bill. That's now that's the statutes for drunk driving right now. That's the platform for drunk driving. We need to discover that platform. All right, because there are many of us. We can place the blame all we want. It doesn't make a difference. Placing blame helps nobody. Making somebody the villain helps nobody. Being held accountable for our own actions is what makes it better. Righting our wrongs is what make these things better. So having a platform and a law standing behind us, whether it's pastors or not. People, most people, I'm gonna be quiet because I can talk a lot.
Hey, listen, you don't have to sanction yourself, brother.
That's right.
Listen, this is not a place where you gotta be self-conscious. Am I talking too much? Because this is the first time you're here, so you got a lot to make up for. The time you we not nobody gonna cut you down. Just
No.
make sure I say this. Just make sure you know that we can get to hear what you're saying, because I know you're on the move, and that's one of the things we understand, that you saying a lot of important factors. Some of it getting a little bit choppy. So definitely. But I would have to agree wholeheartedly with what you were saying, and that's really what this think tank is about. I mean, we're not just here to flap our mouth and flap our jaws. We're looking at, but I think everything, like in the Philadelphia 76ers, when they established the process, is a process. You know, you have to really work to get to a point where we can go to find us a council person or representative who is ready to really write some legislation to help change some of this that's affecting us. But we got to also have enough, as I like to say in the world, research to show that there's a large group of people that care. Because a lot of times it looks like we don't care. They look for people who they think don't care. And when you don't have us, we have a ragtag, you know, we almost like the rebels over here with our little flag flying and saying that we do care. But as I found in this work, and I find every day in my conversation with fathers and men, that many of them do care, but they don't have a flag to fly under. They don't have a flag. So they stuck saying, well, and we can pretend like that. People are like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by this? Hey, this man came in here talking about the Miami Heat. That's a flag. They fly under this Miami Heat flag. You know, the Miami Dolphins, they fly under Miami Dolphins. These people with the stars on their head, every time you see them, they got a star. I ain't even never been to Texas. They got a star on their head. They fly under that star. They fly under that. And they ride or die for that. So once we're able to get enough people to ride and die for fatherhood in a way, but I think we have a lot of people. It's just that there not have been a place for them to look and say, this is our flag, and this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. Because we can do it. They argue and say, hey, fatherhood, the most important thing, you know, kids not being in a house without fathers. And because I asked you this question. I asked this question. We talked about Jimmy Butler just a minute ago. Say Jimmy Butler mom put him out the house, right?
Where's that?
Would she have put him out the house if his dad was around? Because he should have been able to leave his mama house, like Trey and them, and go stay at his daddy house. Because mommy was fed. And this is the reality. This is the kind of thing we see where single parents can do a good job, but they're not equipped for that work. That work is hard. It's a two-person job.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm sure that Jimmy Butler has a relationship with his real mom because he has somebody else that then co-parent with his real mom eventually. We got to get back to, if you drop that semen, you need to be the seaman that they see.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Right.
Seaman. If you drop semen, you need to see that man.
Yes.
Don't stop with it. We have to recognize, and there's a lot. Listen, I'm the advocate for non-consensual fatherhood. Listen, I understand, but in the long run, we have to think of something more than ourselves, because your legacy, your future, and whatever you have that's going to be left to this world is nothing if it's no one there saying, I remember my dad. Even I didn't talk you, and I hear this story all the time about people say, I didn't talk to my dad till he was on his deathbed. And I talked to him for 3 days and learned everything about him that I could learn. That's powerful. It might not seem like the right thing. Again, I was watching the Oprah Winfrey thing today with Van Zett, and they were saying, you know, why would a man leave his kids? And sometimes they make it seem like it's so difficult to understand. It's not difficult to understand, but what option, other options sometimes do we have for those dads? See, that's a legislation we need to look at. What's the other option for a dad not to leave? He can leave, but what's the other option for him still to be connected? Because a lot of times, if anything don't go good and don't go right, it ain't no connection. Now we put something in play where, hey, I'm a big advocate for this. You ain't just got to pay child support, Jack. And I'm gonna tell you, there's a lot of people who think that dads wouldn't want to do this, but a lot of my dads would. You don't just pay child support; you are mandated, like you mandated to pay child support to get that goddamn kid and be with him, no matter how it work out. You are mandated to do it.
But now you're talking about and if we're going to talk about strategies and just being strategic, and I'm just going to build off of what you and Bond both said, then we got to understand that child support started with a legislation. I don't think child support it's not that old. And child support started with legislation because it had to be an injustice or disparity that affected everybody, right? And I think this is where we kind of dropped the ball, because I think sometimes we become like we get victim-minded. That's a good way to put it, victim-minded. What do I mean like that? About that? We start to think like the people who victimized us. And so we start to think in silos, like, let's just get this particular justice just for us. You understand? And so when we go and when we think like that, we become what they call bad negotiators, because we're not able to identify things that can benefit all of us. You understand? Or we may see something like a piece of white, and I'm saying a piece of white legislation, but let's just go that route. Let's say a piece of white legislation that can benefit Black people. Do we look at white legislation like that? You understand? And do we see our angle and our equity? And I'm talking about in anybody, the equity in even our enemies' plan. That's what I'm saying. And so because man is not infinite and man is not God, there's always a loophole. Because if that wasn't true, you won't have the Thurgood Marshalls, you won't have the Johnny Cochrans, and all of them, those phenomenal Black attorneys throughout history that knew how to navigate, right? All the injustices. Huh? Yeah. And know how, right, and Ben Crump. Because they
I didn't say Crump. I said Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas. But he's there. Contrary to popular belief, he's still there, even though his skin color is hated. But he's still there because he was able to lobby and convince them that, guess what? He can be equitable to them just as much as he should have been equitable to his people. That's what I'm trying to say. And so with that, there's a lot of what you guys saying on pushing lobby. You're going to need lobbyists first. And the lobbyists are the guys on the corner that's always talking about this issue, but don't have no place to invest it. All the lobbyists is a great convincer. He's a great talker. He does a lot of ear hustle. He's very good at convincing you. That's a lobbyist. And he know how to get up there and make his point in under 30 seconds and to convince people and win the room. That's a lobbyist. And he know how to win the money. That's a lobbyist. And get the money on his side. But he also know how to appeal to the masses to get what, guess what? Not what the masses need. He know how to appeal to the masses to get what he needs, even if it's selfish. So how can we become lobbyists that's unselfish and get what the masses need in a more equitable way?
All right, lobbyists.
I don't want to sound so political and philosophical, but I'm just talking where you know, I'm going to stop to put the information down. What they say on the shelf where everybody can receive it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Lionel absolutely right, and I think the other
Yes, it is.
The other part of that is that we have to find a way to be finessing to do it. It's no way we're going to come off saying that we want to have father rights, right? And with some, and I'll be very honest. There's a guy called on Instagram. He talks about he does radical. He talks every week. I think it's Father Matt or something. Father support, something of that nature. But I watch his thing sometime. But it's so rough, and it's almost like adversarial, right? And when I look at things being adversarial, the first thing I think of, people are going to look at, that's not something I want to support. We have to, when we're talking about establishing something in this nature, it has to look that it's going to benefit, like Lionel said, the family, everybody. Not that I need to get my peace of mind because I've been victimized by the system or by this woman, and I don't get. We have to really show that, no, it's not. This is not what I'm here for. I'm here for the same thing that many fathers are able to show when they're in court, to show that, hey, I'm here about my child. And I believe it's important for me to do certain things for certain things to happen. And if you don't do that, most of the time you're going to look as an adversary, as somebody who has power, a patriarchy of power broker who's already have the privilege over the woman, you know, and so you have to. It's not going to be as easy as saying, and that's another part that we have to know, because I think that there's a lot of platforms that you could go to and advocate with them, but is that the kind of way we want to do it? Is that the kind of finesse we look at? And I'll say this very clear, as Black men, is that the way we want to do it? Because I don't think, you know, many times we'll say, oh, men together, get together and do these things. But I think we also have to do things our own way, because we see our women completely. We listen, and anybody could argue me down, but I will argue this to the day we die. Black Americans come from patriarchy, matriarchy, not patriarchy. We have this argument about the Black patriarchy. There ain't no such thing as a Black patriarchy. You know, the idea is that even in, I watched a Michael Jordan thing, the Air movie, Michael Jordan thing. Perfect example of when I argue that there is none. Michael Jordan's father was the leader of that house, but his mama ran the business, ran what happened. Okay? Because that's how we operated to survive in this society. Mr. Charlie couldn't go speak to the man. Miss Ellen, who raised half of their kids and cleaned their house, had to go speak to the man and get things done. That doesn't bring Mr. Charlie down in it, because Mr. Charlie still ran his house. He still was the man of his house and provided for his family. But under the oppression that this family faced, they had to find, again, finessing ways to handle a lot of the issues. You know, because nobody want to end up, most of these women did not want to end up raising these kids by themselves. Not because the man went off, because she had to put him in the grave. Had to chop him down from the tree. I'm keeping it 100 with you, because we can pretend like that's not the reality, but that reality has transitioned to us, and sometimes how we operate as a family and in couples and relationships with Black men and Black women. And sometimes we act like it's not. We look over at the other people and say, oh, we just like them. We not. You know, we might do some of their bad behaviors because we want to be like them, but that's not the fundamental of how we manage who we are and where we came from and where we are today. Because again, I would say that we have some of the best marriages, the best family structures that you could ever see. Because when you imagine a family where the mom went and took care of a whole nother family and still held her own family together, that's phenomenal. The people couldn't even handle their own family. She took care of their family and her own family. So you know that's phenomenal. That don't come easy. That don't come light. That's the real deal.
Yep, that's what happened with my mom.
That's an interesting point, Brother Ron. When I think about my history, the Tenny history, when I did research, my great grandfather was given up by his family and taken in by another family. And I'm not exactly sure why he was given up, other than the fact that stuff like that happened in the Deep South. And
Yeah, right.
if a family wasn't able to take care of everybody, they would,
Yeah.
ship the kid off so that that kid could be taken care of. And so my great grandfather was a product of being raised by another family. And it's interesting that you say, I guess, from a historical perspective, that the black arena, if you will, is a matriarchal type of scenario, simply because of the I guess the slave culture that we were brought from. So then that begs the question, um, when you see a lot of black single moms with dads who are out there who are trying to be involved, is this, man, I hate to use the word, Brother Lionel, you can help me out. I hate to use the word generational curse, but are we just perpetuating this matriarchal scenario and kind of accepting that this is the way it is, and not putting together as a culture systems to break down um, that fallacy that single moms can do it by themselves and single dads can, from a distance, be a father.
I wouldn't, and remember, I don't believe in no generational curses. I believe in generational choices, but never generational curses. I never put my people under them. But I can tell you this, well, I can tell you what I do believe in. I believe in legislational curses. I believe a whole lot in legislation curses. You understand? And legislation curses is a legislative curse is that of child support with no thought in mind for the father's input. It automatically made the father the villain, gave the father no equity. It stripped them of all equity, almost to the equivalent of slavery. So it took his rights away. As a matter of fact, it didn't even recognize him as a father, because they got the thing about it is they'll put a punitive damage on you, which means they'll put child support on you. And even though child support is a legal judicial document, right, it still won't give you the rights to your child in family court, right, which is an oxymoron. You understand? And a major contradiction. You understand? So the fact that I'm like, and the reason they can do that is because the population that they was really targeting is the population, number one, who couldn't afford attorneys, which was for majority of minority fathers, and particularly poor white fathers. And so that's who that legislation rather continued to disenfranchise. Throughout the years, it was actually conceived. But throughout the years, the black fathers was able, like so many other things, just like our whole existence in this country, we were able to still, for some reason, when something against us in 2015, or better yet, it was 2010 when the census was actually taken, 2015 when the census was completely studied and published, the fact that black fathers were the most, or better yet, doing the best in their children's lives than all the fathers in the country. And that's what they're saying. They're talking about relationship-wise, the fathers, black fathers had the best involvement and the best relationship with their children than every other race in the country. And so I'm saying that to say this. Now, how do we capitalize on that fact? Because that is a fact. Because again, the census is only what? They do the census every 10 years. So that was 2015. Again, we got about 2 years left on that particular study. But how do you, I guess the best way to say this, how do you as black people, and I think we're geniuses, how do we take something that's instinctive and make a dollar, or continue to make a dollar out of 15 cents? Because that's what we do. You understand? Despite all the statistics and disparities and blah, 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 we continue to make a dollar out of 15 cents. And this is the man's, and particularly the black man's, way of making a dollar out of 15 cents. And nobody really celebrated. We had to find it and dig for it like diamonds. And I got to tell you this, and some of you guys are probably just hearing this right now, that particular study, which is a factual study done by the CDC and published in the New York Times. And again, there was no parades, no nothing. You understand? Not that we wanted one. We were just happy being the fathers and the surrogate fathers that we are, or that we naturally was put here to be.
What, Lana, you know, it's funny you say that because, and it goes right back into Ed's conversation about, and I won't say, I think that we sometimes emulate very bad behaviors and narratives. This narrative that there's many, and I could be wrong and somebody can correct me, that's cool. But there is this narrative that I know when I worked in domestic violence that many of the white men who domestically abused their partners didn't want anything to do with the kids. They didn't want anything to do with anything. They want everything about it. They didn't fight for the kids. They, and if they did fight for the kids, a lot of times they're fighting for them for a power and control tactic that they would get the kids to hurt the mom and those things. And you would see these things happening. And then what happens to us, I feel sometimes as Black men, is that we get lumped up into men. And then everything that the mainstream does, they say we do too. But I think that CDC report gave a whole nother viewpoint to that, is that we don't do because you know why we don't do? Because no one asks us what we do. Like on this platform, you get opportunity to hear what people have done and what they would do. But in normal circumstances, they're going to tell you that a Black man ain't in his kid's life. They ain't going to ask no Black man, hey, here's another thing they're going to do. And it's a great one. This is the one that they use as a tear us down. How many kids you have? Because how many kids you have somehow means that you are not a good father. If you say, oh, I got 6 kids, the first thing they think is, oh, this is a deadbeat person. And that's their narrative. They don't say, oh, wow. They don't ask you the next question they should ask is, wow, your wife went through all that. They don't ask you that. They was like, well, they go on with this narrative. They don't ask any more questions. They say,
they ask one more. They ask one more. I got 6 kids. Well, how many baby mamas you got? What does that matter? What does that matter?
Right. Why does that?
Ask me, am I actively engaged in my children's life?
Absolutely.
Ask me if I'm doing everything to make sure that the lives they have were better than the life that I had. Right. Ask me that. Yeah. But I don't mean to cut you off. Keep going.
No, hey, listen. Listen. Don't let the people lose out on something, because my mind ain't got it all. You hit it right on the head. That is a perfect example of that narrative that people put on us, but they're not asking us the real questions. I had a friend, my buddy, I was on the show this morning and we was talking about masculinity and how father's masculinity, and I almost got uneasy how father's masculinity affect their children's sexuality, right? At some point. And then I wanted to say that, listen, masculinity and how your father act nothing they got to do with your sexuality. People's sexuality completely different than what they father, unless the father did something sexual with their child, that affect they say. But the love they show their child, the affection, the feelings, the emotions, how they have, don't have nothing to do with their sexuality. And when we got into the conversation, my buddy who was listening, he came down on himself a little bit. He was like, I'm not that affectionate with my kids. And I said, brother, you ain't got to worry about being affectionate because you do everything for them. We sometimes get caught up in these, as Lionel like to say, these buzz things that people saying we got to do and question what we do. And sometimes we need somebody to be there. And I seen this meme about a swimmer who jumped in the water and she, I guess when she got down there, she went unconscious and her coach was watching. And the coach knew what she does and how things go. And the coach noticed that she didn't come back up. And the coach jumped in the water and saved her. And that whole meme was about who are the people who know you and will tell you when you're doing right and when you're doing wrong and how things go, because they know you and will they be there. And at that moment, when he told me that, I said, brother, don't ever say that, because you're one of the best fathers I know. You do you goddamn is Mr. Mom. You take them everywhere. You do everything with your kids, man. You live your life around your kids. You almost look like a mom. Like that's how these moms How do you be? You know, your wife do, you know, she doing mom stuff, whatever, but you with the kids all the time. So don't underestimate that just because you don't do certain things a certain way, that these kids don't know that you love them, or that they don't know that you care, because you do a lot of stuff with them. And don't let somebody, and that was my big thing. I said, don't let what our conversation we had on that air, people saying, oh, if you're not affectionate, you're not doing this, something's gonna be wrong with your kid. Because we wasn't, and then me and him was raised together. We wasn't raised like that. Our moms didn't, you know, our mom didn't really tell us that they loved us. Our moms didn't tell us they loved us. Think about that. We both said that. But we knew they loved them, because guess what? She was hucking and jiving and taking care of everything needed to take. You can't mistake the action. You can mistake words, but you can't mistake actions. If somebody say something, but they don't do nothing, you know very clearly that they just talking. Mm-hmm. And so, and that's a big part of what we have to begin to do for each other, and also support each other. If you see this brother being a good father, don't let people bring him down and say he's not a good father. That's but if he right. Listen, who is determining what a goddamn good father is? You got the Forbes magazine to say what it is to be a good father? No, we don't. So if you can see his life and he can see it, you can tell him, hey man, you're doing good. And you also can tell him, hey man, what you doing? What are you doing? What you doing?
Ron, you know what happens, Ron? You got two. Oh, go ahead, Lightborn.
Oh shoot! Hey, you heard me? No, go ahead, Ron. I mean, J. Rob, it's your turn.
All right. Yeah. So, two things. One, when you talk about being a good father, I think it's subjective. That's first of all, and not everyone's going to father the same. All of us are not parenting the same. Even if we will not parent the same as our significant others, the mother of the kids, and we definitely aren't going to parent the same in general as far as how we deal with situations. Now, we always can bounce ideas off of each other as fathers, but then we're going to take it on and we're going to make it our own when we handle it with our kids. You see what I'm saying? So a father who doesn't, hug his kid or anything like that, when you get older, you're like, yo, he wasn't very affectionate, but he was always there.
Right.
He always showed me he cared because he never missed anything. And so you're going to get that aspect, and you're going to get them to understand, well, that's how he showed he loved me, and I know he loved me because of this. Then you can have fathers who may not be able to make it to everything, but whenever they see you, they're hugging you, they're giving you a kiss, they're telling you good things, and that's the way they did it. And when that child grows up, he's going to say, or she will say, he may not have been at everything for me, but when he was there, I felt his presence because he showed me by the way he interacted with me, with the hugs and the kisses and everything, and I know he cared about me. So that first part is just to say that people are going to show their affection in different ways, and you can't judge one person by another person and tell them you're not doing what you should be doing when they're doing everything they possibly can be doing. And that's just nature.
Let's just use the best father as the standard, right? Let's go for perfection here. And let's see what the perfect father has to say about this expression of love. What is it? Do you have to say it? So when I look at two particular scriptures, because my standard is my highest standard, my best self, if you really want to correct me, you're gonna have to really go to scripture and go to that Bible. Other than that, that's going to be hard to really have a discussion or debate with. But when I will yield to that scripture, and I will yield to that Bible, and by God being the ultimate father, the utmost, the best father that we're going to ever know, the Bible says, God so loved the world, he gave, right?
That's right. That's right.
Then you got another scripture that says, love is, and then it goes into all these adjectives. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love doesn't puff up itself. You understand? Yeah. Now, what do all those two scriptures have in common? It tells me that love has everything to do with doing and nothing to do with saying. That's a fact in those scriptures. It has nothing to do with that Bible saying, oh, you have to say you're doing that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Everything about love in the Bible is actually an action. Everything about love in the Bible is a verb. Yeah. You understand?
And the fact that we allow somebody narrative, somebody garbage narrative at that, to understand, to reduce love to being love, what they call it, to reduce love to talk is cheap. They go back to Teeny's point of why people continue to have divorce and single parent rate, because what we did, we reduced love to a conversation as opposed to the action it was meant to be. So guess what, Teeny? That actually answered your question because it came full circle. So I'm like, wait a minute. The Bible never said that love was a talking point. It said love is an action. You will never see love in the Bible in no aspect of it as a talking point. You will always see love as an action. That's a fact. And so if that is true, if we shame on us if we allow people to reduce love to talking than an action. Because if you're not, if your love is not an action and it's just talking, you really don't love. You need to question yourself. And back to your friend's point, Ron, the person who he's feeling bad, I'm like, no, you don't need to second guess yourself. Maybe they need to second guess themselves. They're thinking that, oh, because your parents ain't say they love you, this and that. And guess what? You need to really have an indictment on yourself if you don't know love when you see it. Or more importantly, love when you experience it, especially if you experience it for 50 years, like or 51 years like I did.
Hey, Lionel. Lionel, you know my son. You've met my son. Let me back up some. The other night, I'm in the living room and there's something on TV. I'm not watching the television. I just hear what the man is saying as I walk past. I say, oh, God damn, that was deep. So I go back to I'm looking for the remote. I finally find it down in the couch. I pull it out. I rewind it, right? He says, I rewinded it because I wanted to make sure I was going to get it right for a time like this. He says he has 4 children and his 4 children have 4 different dads. And the person that was standing there said, what? Confused and baffled. He says, yes, for each one of my 4 children, I have to be a different person because they're different people. All right. So you know Bear, as long you've been knowing Bear all his life. He's one of the most rugged kids you ever want to meet. So that huggy, kissy, feely stuff, Daddy would never fly with that dude. Right? He always wanted me to be cut and dry, straight to the point. Like it was a difference in how I had to deal with him and my daughters. I had to deal with each one of my daughters because I have a daughter that's been independent since she was 7 years old. Right? So by 10 years old, I'm giving her money to go pay bills because I ain't know how to work the computer at the time. Right? I'm giving her the credit card to make sure things are done right. I had to deal with them individually. And that's what we have to keep in mind. There's some that at some point we all need to hear that, right? That's nothing, but the words mean nothing. I used them words when I was in the streets messing with multiple women. If she fell for the fact that I said I loved her with no action, that was on her. But the one I married is the one that knew I loved her based on the actions that I took. You dig what I'm saying? So there's a difference. We have to, again, the narrative is created that I can say I love you all I want. But if I'm not showing you that I love you as a brother, not as a father, not as a spouse, as a brother, you know if I love you, if I never say it. And you know I probably never will tell you, well, you know I love you. Because I'm going to show it to you. So those are perfect analogies, what you just put forth, man.
Yeah, Jason, you took the words right out of my mouth because I was going to say almost the very same thing about the fact that we not only do we father differently from one another, but we father our children differently as well. No matter how many children you have to have a different relationship with each of them. And then for Ron there, I was going to say that he was talking about actions. And I was going to say that we have to make sure that we're really using our actions correctly because our actions speak so loudly that no one can hear a word we're saying.
And I want to back it up a little bit, because Ron did raise a point earlier that I want to address too, because it comes full circle with what everyone's saying. The whole fact of the narrative, and I know that Lightborn touched on this too, the narrative and how do you change the narrative? The problem is that with the narratives that they're getting is the ones that they're searching for within the areas in which they're going to find it. And once you start searching in areas, you're always going to get what you're looking for. They're not looking at people like this, like us, on this Zoom, because we're not their demographic. We're not the ones that they need to perpetuate what the stereotype, right? So they're going to go look for where they can find those stereotypes. And if it's going to be in the areas of a lot of broken homes and a lot of issues, and that's where they're going to go find it. But it's such a minute amount of people that they have now conflated to look like it's the majority of the people. Because until you can control the media that comes out, right, on families and on how it looks, and how do you say, the Superman complex that people want to have when it comes to saving the Black culture. Until you start combating those things to say, hey, look, we don't need a Superman to save us. We need you guys to give us equity. And that's a big difference, right? And so until you start combating those things and getting people on one accord, right? And even in the education piece, to us to go back and say, hey, let's pull someone else up and educate them, like at least give them the knowledge to know better. Whether you're going to do better is an individual basis, but at least you have the knowledge to know better. And that this is not the norm, because oftentimes, and I'll tell you, when we're in separate spaces and you are doing certain things and other races are involved, they look at you like you're the exception to the rule when you are the rule and everybody else is an exception. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have to start changing, and making sure that everyone understands that we're the rule. Everybody else is an exception.
Well, that's perfect what you said, because in that very statement that you just said, there was a narrative I can see right now that needs to be changed with that broken home syndrome. That's a narrative that victimized so many Black and brown communities. It's ridiculous, because I'm like, how do you confuse being broke with being broken? You understand? And so I'm like, never confuse our communities being broke with being broken. And the reason that we're broke because of the historical harms and the reparations that never came. And so if you want to take, I'm like, you can take credit for us being broke, but we ain't never broken. That's a difference. I said, because to say broken, we got to watch how people slip that narrative in on us, because broken is what they did. I said, broken is what you did to our ancestors. So you turn that mirror back around to them. If something going to be broken, it's start with this system first. Then we can work our way to slavery, and then we can work our way to Jim Crow, and then we can start to talk and get some kind of closure when you really want to talk to me. But right now, you're not going to sit here and put a narrative on me, you understand, and not take account for what your ancestors did to my ancestors. That's broken. Right now, we just simply broke because of the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusions we have yet to give, even though we have equal buy-in when it comes to our tax base. That's all I know.
40 acres in the
Balano, let me say this, because I think that, as you said, that it sparked in my brain. You know, I'm always thinking about what they gonna say, because I'm always thinking good debate. I'm always thinking about what the opposition gonna say, the ops gonna say. And the first thing I'm gonna say is, oh, but you survived, your resilience. That word resilience gonna come up, right? And my problem with that becomes is, oh, well, in spite of, you still did. Listen, I don't want to hear that. That still don't change what happened. My leg was cut off. I got a prosthetic and I'm walking. That don't change. My leg was cut off. You trying to be like, oh, you walk so good. You're doing good walking. Yeah, but my leg was cut off. You bypassing that I'm walking good now with the idea that my leg was cut off. But you're not supposed to hear that about a leg being cut off, because guess what? You walking so good now. Look how you walking now. And if you don't walk, if I don't get a prosthetic and I'm in the street, it's then saying, why I ain't picking myself up by my legs and doing something. You know, that's the course. Either you gonna do, oh, you're so good, you're resilient, and look where we at, or you too downtrodden. You're not even willing to do anything for yourself, not even trying to do anything. So you can't get no empathy. Empathy. You get some sympathy, but you won't get no empathy on either end. And
Well,
that's a problem. That's the
It's
problem.
like what you're saying is, go ahead, Lightbone. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You have to demand that. And so I'm saying there's certain things you can't do around me. I'm pretty sure you're not going to use the B in a matter of fact, you ain't going to use the N word around me. Don't use the B word around me either. You talking about bitch? No, broken. So, I ain't worried about the other B word. I'm talking about the B word that apply to all of us. We were never broken. As a matter of fact, from this day forward, nobody can even use that around me now. That's offensive. You understand? To say that, and we accepted the fact they talking about we came from broken homes. That don't even make no sense. You understand? The common sense is not even in that because you're saying broken plus home. You understand? So I have you get to judge my home, partner, but you don't want to judge your history. So how we allow people to judge our homes, but we don't put a mandate on them judging their history. You understand? So I'm like, nah, player. If you're gonna be uncomfortable with me judging your history. So how you think you're gonna get to judge my home? And that's something that we allowed for the sake of just trying to look pseudo-intellectual. We will sit at these tables and say nothing, and that's the greatest injustice of a black man.
Absolutely. Because I can't. You listen. If something gets broken, how did it get broken? You can't listen. You can't say it. But somehow this cognitive dissonance that many of us have in our community, and have bought this narrative that we just broken. We believe that. There are people who believe that it's our innate person to be broken. And I can't understand how you come to that. It's so many evidence that it's not. Listen, just the idea that, look at LeBron James. I'm gonna use LeBron James, for example. You know, because he's getting a lot of hate right now. LeBron James came from a single parent home, they don't really know his daddy. You know, we went to school, whatever. All the things that he's supposed to be is a big thug. But he did what we do by instinct, by nature. He did all the things opposite of what you wanted him to be. He married his sweetheart. His kids was the prime of his life. He's a great basketball player, but them kids mean more to him than basketball. And it's very obvious. Very obvious. You can see it. You can see it from when his first son, Bronny, was born. They had a little documentary how he was bedazzled to be a dad. And I think he's an example of many dads that bedazzled to be a dad. You know, he does the charitable things he does. He speaks up for social issues, all these things he does. He just came at the time to be able to do it. But the reality is he is not supposed to be that. If the idea of this thing to believe that we are broken people, because he would have never made it from believing that he could fly. So it is a thing where we have to really push the narrative. And you're right, Lionel. We need to be indignant about it when people come around us and say certain things or believe certain things, because as people will go in, like they said, the news people will have all these people they can ask a question to about what happened, and they go to the person to answer. The person who know everything that happened, they walk right past that person and go talk to the person don't know nothing. And that's our society. And we got to be stronger on it. And we have to be a force and set the standard that we are who we are. We are in there. That old saying, God don't make no mistakes. We ain't no mistake, brother. We ain't never been no mistake. The mistake is what you do to the thing that's supposed to be a mistake. Pinocchio was supposed to be a mistake, but he came alive. I know.
So Ron, your example, I got to go back and say, because LeBron James is the norm. He didn't do anything extraordinary. Look, he's a millionaire doing it, right? A man making $20,000 a year is doing the same thing. Putting his kids first, spending all his money on his kids, trying to do everything for those kids and get them to where he wants them to be and where they deserve to be, not where we think they should be, where they deserve to be. And that's a very different statement that
Yes,
you guys
yes.
understand it.
I love it.
And so
Yes,
what happens is when they look at him like, well, man, and that's the narrative they give. Man, being raised by a single parent, you wouldn't think he could achieve. Why not? Why not? Achievement is all about your pursuit and what you desire in life and how you're going to attack it. That's what achievement is, right? And all he did was have the backing of a parent. Because a lot of times what you need is, as long as a person has the backing of a parent, they have a better chance of success in handling it on their own and trying to figure life out. And so one thing that you got to understand is, again, he's the norm. An involved father. He's an involved father in a home, taking care of his kids and proving the statistic that Lightborn keeps saying, accurate.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah, he was the epitome of because you're talking about the stereotypes. I mean, his situation was a stereotype. Not only was she a single parent, she was a teenage parent. She's pretty young. And so to see that you can overcome, I'm like, we have been overcome. You didn't hear the song? We've been overcoming since we got here. So I think we need to stop letting people isolate Black success to one type of celebrity or whatever the case may be. When I'm like, no, our success gives birth to celebrities. That's how hip hop and all the other stuff was born. And we got to own that. And guess what? Again, back to your point, Ron, be indignant when people, because guess what? People come to the table, coming to the table now with their indignance. Women, shouldn't be there. And I agree with them. Women shouldn't be whatever. The LGBT got their indignance. They don't want to hear. I'm like, we need to be at the table like, okay, certain things you can't say when it comes to manhood as well. Well, you guys got all the privileges. Yeah, but doesn't mean we lack integrity. You understand? And there's certain things that we, guess what, should be a non-negotiable when we having these conversations, particularly about manhood, fatherhood, and husbandhood as it stands as a whole in its totality.
So I would venture to say that we already have the narrative by our success. Somehow we have to popularize that narrative in everybody's eyesight, because that is not under our control how we are seen in the media. For some reason, we have no control over that. And somehow we have to wrestle that narrative back from the media because the stuff that you guys are espousing is just so true. I just don't have any idea, I guess, in my mind, in this think tank right now at this moment, to be able to understand how to regain the focus, because the focus is not on the focus is, like you mentioned, LeBron James. The focus is on his athleticism and his success in that. It's not focused on what he's been able to do coming from a single parent household. How do you begin to highlight that as a success? And, that's not spoken of.
And Eddie, you know what? Listen, they can call me conspiracy theorists all they want. You know that the people will say that LeBron James is who he is because he was in the NBA. The NBA gave him that because that's what they give us. They give those guys this standard of who they should be and how they should be. And that's bologna and cheese. Mm-hmm. That's bologna and cheese. It's not true. But the narrative will come, and we gotta be mindful. We'll say, no, that sounds crazy. But just think about it. They'll say, see, because he was in the NBA, he became these things. Not that he became them because of who he was. It go right back into your story. The story is the NBA stuff, not the LeBron stuff. Not LeBron, the kid LeBron, his thoughts and patterns of what he wanted to do in his life that was different. Outside of just being basketball. See, that the basketball part is there, but if LeBron was like Gene said, like all these other guys in the world who just wanted to be a good engineer that we never hear about, who doing the same identical life things as LeBron is doing with his family and his kids and in his community, no one cares about that person. No, you don't care because guess what? He's not entertaining. He's not doing anything to entertain us.
You don't get ratings points for that.
Absolutely. And it don't fit the narrative for the oppressors.
Well, you know what? I think no, but there's a way to do it because I give somebody credit for doing it. Tupac did it very well. And so what Tupac would do is he would, strategically, this is like, whether it was intentional or unintentional, Tupac would strategically align himself with cameras. So what he'll do, he'll go to teen summits and different things like that and different platforms because he was an advocate of discussion. So Tupac would show up at a community discussion. That's what made him such a powerful rapper. And what he would do, he'd have his 30-second response to everything. And almost like Muhammad Ali, almost the same blueprint Muhammad Ali used. The thing about it is we just not ready. You understand when these platforms come. So the thing about it is right now with social media, and this one makes it how you change it, Teeny, on social media, and particularly Twitter, because all the conversation, the serious conversation goes on Twitter. It doesn't really go on anything else. Twitter is the most serious conversation platform you want to get on. And what you do is you fine tune your response to whatever topic it is. Now, if it's the same topic, use the same response for 100 different platforms, but the same response, but you got to fine tune it. And to your point, Ron, how do we fine tune that LeBron James narrative when it comes to the NBA overshadowing who he is? We got to understand the NBA gave him a contract. You understand? But his community and his culture gave him his character. Mm-hmm. You see the difference? And so when we talk about, you can never say, the NBA is responsible for his character. I'm like, hell to the no. Absolutely. You understand? Listen, the NBA recruited LeBron. LeBron didn't recruit the NBA. What Malcolm X said, we didn't fall on Plymouth.
That's right.
So NBA fell on LeBron. LeBron didn't fall on the NBA. And so that's what we got to understand. We have to correct that narrative. You can't put them little couple years he's been playing for the NBA up against all those years that his culture and his history invested in him to make him the man and the player y'all are fortunate to work with, not for. You understand? He doesn't work for you, partner. He works with you. And the minute we start to see our business relationship as partnerships and less as ownerships, because at some point, people got it confused that the NBA or any franchise own black men.
Absolutely.
I'm like, that's a partnership, not an ownership partner. And when you and then guess what? Put that spotlight on it and turn it up. Make it Kentucky Fried Chicken hot when you put that light on. And the question is, put that demand on it. You understand? And guess what? And take your narrative back. That's it. I'm excited.
All right, Kentucky Fried.
Amen.
Like that line up. Kentucky Fried.
Kentucky Fried Chicken hot dog.
I was going for churches, but it wasn't that, right?
Y'all better get yourself together if you want to get some of that Kentucky Fried Chicken hot. I mean, hey, listen, I'm sorry. I have to agree with you. It's more churches hot. Because you ever had some churches chicken, that joint is like, it's like the grease is still cooking on the chicken when you get it. So you put that in your mouth. So you're absolutely right, Lonnie. You put that in the right place. And I mean, as we and listen, look, I say this all the time, folks, that you're watching, if you're rewatching, if you just started watching. These are the kind of conversations. These are the kind of things that men, not just us, because I think that their fathers all over, when they're in the right place in the right time, having this same kind of conversation. And a lot of times that conversation is not focused, you know, around these topics. It's sometimes focused around, a lot of times around sports, right? Most of the time. Even when we used to do this back in the day, one of the things that, you know, when we used to meet live, the objective was, oh, let's send it around sports and we'll get them to come, right? And get the guys to come because everybody loves sports. But the problem is that sports is an entertainment. We're dealing with real social, emotional issues for our families, our communities. Sports is never going to give us that. Sports is a pleasure. It's something to escape. We need to focus so much on the reality of what's really going on with us and what's happening. And sometimes the reality of what happened to us is very good and positive. That's probably the problem. You know, if we spent more time to talk about all of these great things that's going on and begin to publicize them, go to the mountaintop and scream out, you know, what we're doing and how our brother is doing this and how that's happening, you'll start seeing some real haters come out of the woodwork. You know, and I know this because anytime, who said this? I guess that, you know, I heard this recently that, you know, when it's your best time in your life, the devil will come, right? The devil will come at your best time. But I heard another twist on that to say, well, at your lowest time, the devil was already there. So what it meant, then what's you know, and I think that that's such a good point to make for us to know that we don't need to be afraid. We need to stand on what we believe as fathers and how we believe as fathers and share that as much as possible with whoever we can, however we can, and hopefully just the actually having that conversation, because I know how much the conversation means to all us and what it means to us after we have these conversations and what it does for us in our everyday, all, you know, the rest of our life. Because if it didn't mean anything to us, we would be like, you know, I'm good on it. I don't need to come. I'm not getting anything. When we're not getting anything, we don't really do too much. You know, if you go to the strip club and they don't have no dancers, you're probably not gonna continue to go. It's, you know, that's just the reality. You don't go to the strip club because they got good chicken wings. You usually go because they got nice dancers that you want to see dance around, you know, and I think that's a part of you know, I gotta use whatever kind of language I can to get across to people because I know they listening and watching it, and they, you know, so I just got to use some of that vernacular. But that's the reality. We what say other time is I know.
Beautiful.
Let me do five Hail Marys. And
Ron, I have a question for you.
Yes, brother, boy.
Yes, you say that sports as entertainment isn't really going to make it for us. And it's true that as spectators, it's just that's all you're doing is watching. But suppose we could reach people by participating in sports instead of just watching and talking about sports, but actually getting some young people out there and playing some sports with them. You know,
I believe, but see, I would rather not do sports with them, and I'll tell you why. Because sports will be fun and a fun activity and recreational, but we are sometimes so dissident that the focus would become only on the sports. We couldn't even talk about anything. Mm-hmm. You know, unless we was real strategic. I think sometimes you be over strategic, and I've did that many times when working with families and taking games, board games, sorry game, Monopoly, and utilizing that to entertain the conversation that we need to have, or the conversations we need to have. Because one thing we forget is that, listen, I'll tell you, every one of you guys on here, I know for sure, wasn't quick to talk when they came to a group like this.
Mm-hmm. The reason I ask is because sometimes the discipline in sports can help to change lives. I would imagine. I use discipline in music to have helped to change lives. So I've taught middle school kids and high school kids how to play the violin and the viola, the string bass and cello. And it actually, over a period of time, has actually changed people's lives. And I was wondering if the discipline in sports, because it takes discipline, if the discipline in sports could do the same thing. So it was a question more so than.
Oh yeah. I mean, I believe the discipline is one of the things that saves us very often. It's just that I found that the entertainment part of sports overshadows any at many points any educational part that you could get.
All right. See what it is, Ron, is the sports will bring them in, but you gotta at some point the conversation has to shift to not playing on the team but owning the team.
Right.
And once you shift the, hey, this is how you own the team. It's okay to play for them, but this is how you own your own team, right? That's where the benefit will start to come in. For instance, I'll use your example, Mr. Boyd, as far as the music goes. You taught them a skill that they can now take on and teach someone else, right? And so even as they excel within that skill, they can become more proficient and more professional and take it on to advance themselves. Now, am I saying you can't do that with sports? No, I'm not saying that. But it's so much in so many terms, when we do with the sports, all we do is to teach them how to play for someone and not have someone play for them. And that's where the difference is. And when we're talking about, sports versus any other thing that would draw people into a conversation that you want them to actually change a narrative or change the way they think about something. Because a lot of people view, and I'll tell you, at one point in life, a lot of people viewed, hey, I'm going to do these sports to get out the hood, right? And that's all they saw. That was their ceiling. And no one ever told them, hey, nah, man, you could use these sports to own your own team to get out the hood. Let's just say you don't make it. You're not in that top 10% that make it, but take your skill and become a big time coach or become whatever else you can do with that skill. And that's the conversation that needs to be had when you're talking to them. And I'm using that just as an analogy, but again, it's to change the way they think about how they view their potential and their purpose. Because all it is reframing what their purpose can be and what their purpose actually is.
Yeah. Because if the goal is to get out of the hood using sports, the percentage is very low.
Right.
Yeah.
Ron, we had time.
Yeah, I know we was getting the last couple. We was getting the last couple of minutes in there. But I think that it is powerful for us to even as we come to this think tank, we start thinking about things like Brother Boyd brought up is how can we use sports to be disciplined? And not only that, once the kids are disciplined, listen, in many instances, I'm not trying to work with kids a lot of times. I keep it 100. I tell people this all the time. I'm not here to work with kids. I'm here to work with their father. And then the father can go back and work with his kid because his father will have so much more power over what the change of that child will be than me stepping in to be a surrogate. Because there is something missing that has a kid in that space already. And here I am coming to be a Band-Aid. I don't want to be a Band-Aid. I want to go and put some stitches on dad. And then dad can come back and really heal and put some stitches on himself. Because hey, as we say here all the time, we are our brother's keeper, iron sharpens iron. And we accept that and we do that. And when we do that with each other, we make our brother okay to better to go back and be with his woman, be with his children, be with his whole family and do better for the community. And I'll leave it at that. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight for Fatherhood Think Tank. And Father, repeat after me. I am a man of honor.
I am a man of honor.
I am a man of courage.
I am a man of courage.
I am a man of respect.
I am a man of respect.
Fathers, I say that I am.
I am.
I say that you are.
You are.
I say that we are.
We are.
Championship.
Elder, you trying to get the title, huh?
That's right.
Hey, Rohan, what happened to you tonight, brother? We lost you.
No, man, I'm here, man. You guys are talking some deep stuff. So
We want to hear you. We want to hear some of that West Indian talkness.
yes.
I
Why
guess
you
next
think
time.
Brazil? He should have said, why you ain't say that, Rohan?
Yeah.
And I'm just listening, man. Some good stuff you guys talking tonight. Sometimes you gotta listen sometimes.
Uh-huh. All right,
Oh, as I
Ron.
said, thanks for joining us tonight. You can join us tomorrow on the Zoom private father meeting, Fatherhood Talks. Fatherhood Think Tank.
Thank you.
Fathers on our private Zoom meeting. Just look in the chat. Look, when you look down, look in the comments on this YouTube page, and you'll see how to get to the Zoom meeting for tomorrow night, Wednesday, 6:30. All right, good night.